What does 9/11 have to do with soccer moms in the Midwest ODing on heroin in 2017? Turns out a lot. Hi, welcome to this episode of The Economics Detective. Today I want to discuss a sort of odd thing that happened in the wake of the Afghanistan war. If you're younger, you maybe don't remember exactly why it started, and in fact, it was confusing to people at the time. September 11th, 2001. The U.S. was attacked by Saudis, and then they fled, or Osama bin Laden fled to Afghanistan, and the Taliban had him, and they offered to give him up so long as he'd be put on trial in an international court, but the U.S. said no, and so they invaded Afghanistan. So it was kind of a weird thing that happened, but the sort of thing I want to talk about here is after this war, which is still going on, isn't it? It's just an endless war at this point. After basically all of Afghanistan's legitimate institutions and their above ground economy was destroyed. It turns out that Afghanistan has the perfect climate, the most ideal growing situation for poppies, in particular opium poppies. And so here's this graph. It's from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and it charts the number of hectares under cultivation for opium poppies. You can see 2001, the year that, the year of 9/11, the year the invasion started. There was a huge drop, right? And that relates to the disruption associated with being invaded. But, it bounces back to its normal level. But, 2004, it starts to rise and it just keeps, goes up and down. But you can see that there's a huge increase, where it's reaching over 200,000 hectares when typically, in a typical year before the war, it would have just been a quarter of that, right? So, a lot of Afghans switched from other crops that they were growing to growing opium poppies as a sort of illegal cash crop. And the big issue with that is, of course, the drug trade funds terrorism and also can be a harm to many people. Of course, opium, opiates are a medicine and they can help people with chronic pain. But we've had an issue in recent years with people becoming addicted to opiates, being overprescribed certain opiates like OxyContin. You get a sports injury and your doctor prescribes you way too big a dose of OxyContin and you get addicted. And OxyContin's expensive, so then later you turn to the black market in heroin, and odds are that possibly your legitimate your over the counter prescription OxyContin might have been from poppies grown in Afghanistan, but also your black market heroin very likely was grown there as well. And then, maybe you OD. There's been it's sort of a minor ongoing tragedy that that so many people now are overdosing on opiates. And, part of it is just supply and demand that we made it hard for people in Afghanistan to grow the other crops that they were growing before they were invaded. And as a consequence, they turned to this cash crop that they could sell through black markets. And And now the price of opiates is much lower, and they're being sold in greater doses, and the black market is more profitable and has expanded, and more people now OD. So I guess you never really. I mean, it's a story about unintended consequences, but it's it's a place where the war on terror and the war on drugs have combined into this sort of epic failure on both counts to, promote both terror and drug abuse. And it really is sad. But I didn't predict it. I don't know that, that anyone predicted that this would be the outcome of invading Afghanistan, but it's a sad illustration of the way interventions can sometimes go awry.